We all worry about losing clients, and that's that fine balance that auditors have got, isn't it? And I think that if you're going to be a successful auditor, you've got to be willing to have a bit of a fight or an argument. Now I'm old, I can say this, that I don't know that older people make the best auditors. They've got a lot of experience, etc. But we tend to probably not want to have an argument as much towards the end of our career. We worry about losing a client, we worry about having a Barney for 3 or 4 weeks while the matter's resolved, deadlines are coming. But I always take the view that a 3-week argument and even loss of the client is a lot better than the alternative being a 4-year protracted court case over signing a wrong audit report. So to me it's a bit of a no-brainer. I think the biggest risk to a lot of auditors, young auditors, is they're not exposed to real problems, and so they then get into that environment that they think, well, if I follow all the auditing standards and I follow all the checklists and I do all of this stuff, the audit must be correct. And of course when a problem does arise, they either don't know how to identify it, and sometimes these problems that arise are like the tip of the iceberg. Back in the 60s and 70s when I first started, one of our partners got into big trouble on an audit. So I got a training at the start of my career that what could happen and what happens with court cases. And so I think it's important that young auditors are exposed to problems on audits. One thing one of my older partners in my younger days taught me, he said, don't think that your clients are your friends, no matter, he said, because if their whole company and their career and their family are going to be destitute, they'll do anything to save their position. And if that means that you're one of the expenses of that process, they'll put you into that process. I think if you're right, hold the line and go and get your second opinion. I do remember once I had a client, a relatively new client or a new subsidiary, and they had an inventory costing system where they included the finance charges in their inventory costs, and I queried it and I was told that I didn't understand that particular industry and that all of the companies did it. The easiest way there is, instead of having a Barney up front with a client, I found, was just accept what they're saying and say, look, can you go away and get me some company names so that we can verify it? Quite often, well, they're in a position they can't go back and prove their point. So I suppose the main thing that I would say to young people is that it doesn't matter how good your client base is, management change, business pressures change, people will survive, do anything to survive. And so these audit problems can come from what seemed to be a pretty straightforward, good operating company, and you've got no experience with a problem audit, can go pear-shaped very quickly. It's too easy to go in and be provided with information and go in there with the attitude of, how do I prove this right? And so we've ticked all the boxes, as opposed to go in and say, how do I prove this wrong? And so I would just warn young auditors that if the trading results all of a sudden change, have a look at their monthly financials, etc. And if it makes and it looks a bit stupid as an auditor if the company goes broke and they say, well, it made losses up until month 11 and then it made a massive profit in month 12, and you haven't analysed that, you're going to look like a bit of a dud auditor, I'm afraid. It may go down to 1 or 2 bogus transactions. Maybe I just had some bad audit clients in my career, I don't know, but don't discount the bogus transaction. Well, I suppose my training had predominantly been with trading companies and service companies, and attending stock takes seemed to be the norm. It was in those days easy to get a supplier on side to issue some bogus invoices for services or product delivered on site. And even these days with multimedia and your ability to print on computers, you can make up your own invoices. So I would think that the old-fashioned physical attendance, whether it's stock takes or construction sites, etc., hasn't lost its necessity. Don't overlook the whistleblower, because sometimes they don't blow the whistle that hard. I've been pointed in the right direction on a number of occasions throughout my career, and I've done my utmost to maintain the confidentiality of those people that were good enough to point you in the right direction. I had a feeling that some of the expenses in this particular audit client were a bit over the top, maybe weren't all business related, and it was obvious that I was looking at these particular invoices, and a staff member pointed out to me that it must be frustrating, sort of so near yet so far. And auditors should recognise this, that not all whistleblowers want a lot of publicity. They're genuine, hard-working employees that know something's going wrong. Things may have changed in how we do accounting, from handwritten records to highly sophisticated computer stuff, but a crook is still a crook, and it's still a human being. And they need to understand how people will go about manipulating figures, and it can be just around the corner in your next audit. That's why I enjoyed auditing.